Past midnight.
The wind rattled the shutters, and the rain lashed the windows of the small pavilion on the outskirts of the city. Exhausted, Adele had fallen asleep on the sofa, the living room light still on, like every night for 3 months. Since Lena, her only 17-year-old daughter, had not returned.
Suddenly, 3 loud knocks hit the door. No blows from neighbors. Desperate blows.
She jumped up, her heart pounding, crossed the corridor and opened the door. The light from the porch revealed a fragile, soaked figure, her arms clutched to herself, her eyes red. "Mom." The word came out, broken, and Adele's voice choked.
Lena.
And then everything collapsed. She burst into tears, throwing herself on her daughter, hugging her as if to make up for the days, the hours, the prayers screamed in the silence. Lena had always been a light. A lively teenager, with an alert mind, a curious eye, with that something intensely present that attracted attention without ever trying to capture it. She played the cello as if it were an inner voice. Each note seemed to come from a deep place, fragile but solid. When she played, even Adele stopped breathing, caught up in the invisible wave that her daughter was releasing. Their daily life was modest, but full of warmth. A 2-room apartment in a quiet neighborhood, home-cooked meals, sometimes in a hurry, often between 2 confidences, sweet silences, bursting laughter. Adele had been raising Lena alone for 8 years, since the day Julian, the father, left without explanation, a suitcase in his hand, the dry voice of a man already elsewhere. Lena had cried for a week, then started playing again, even harder. She no longer spoke of him. They had built a discreet fortress, made up of complicity and little rituals. Friday movie nights under a blanket, burnt waffle Wednesdays, and the councils of the heart, where Lena recounted her doubts, her teenage sorrows, the unfair teachers, the boys who looked the other way. And then, something had changed. It had crept slowly, like a cold current under the door. First, Lena started coming home later.
Vague excuses. A long music lesson, a surprise rehearsal, a sick girlfriend.
Then she stopped playing the cello at home. His bow, once always within reach, now slept in its case. She smiled less. She spoke less. Adele observed without daring to question.
She knew that overly insistent mothers sometimes break the fragile thread of trust.
So she was silent, noted the shifty glances, the long sighs, the silences after the texts. She had caught Lena deleting a message right after reading it. A name sometimes appeared on the screen. M. Nothing else.
Is everything okay, darling?
Yes, Mom.
Don't worry. Just a little tired.
But the nights were becoming long for Adele. She stayed awake, listening to the slightest noise, guessing behind the door if her daughter was crying or writing to someone she didn't want to name. Until this Friday evening in April. It was raining. Lena had gone out to see Nora, as she often did. She wore her beige jacket, her black bag, and a blue scarf that Adele loved so much. She said, "I'll be home around 10 p.m. It was 11:30 p.m. when Adele sent the first message.
No response.
Then a call. Nothing. At midnight she tempted Nora. She responded, her voice sleepy, confused. "I haven't seen her today, Madam Adele. She told me she had things to do with her music teacher." But Lena didn't have a rehearsal that day.
Adele's heart sank. A visceral intuition, like a blade under the skin.
She called the hospital. The police. She was made to wait. An agent ends up listening to him, but with the tired tone of those who hear the same stories too often. "Your daughter is a teenager, madam. There are no signs of kidnapping. She probably decided to leave for a while."
An argument?
Academic pressure? Running away is common at this age. It's not a runaway. Lena doesn't do this kind of thing.
She don't leave me without news. Calm down, madam.
If she does not return within 48 hours, you can file a formal complaint. But honestly, she will come back. It's the hormones, you know. But Adele knew. She knew something was broken. She didn't sleep that night, nor the following ones. She launched her own research, posted posters in the streets, near the high school, at the conservatory. She printed out Lena's favorite photo, the one where she laughs while holding her cello under a cherry blossom tree. She questioned friends, teachers, neighbors. She even went to talk to the homeless people in the neighborhood, showing them the photo, promising them money if they saw it. The days passed. Nothing. And then, a week later, Nora showed him a message. Received on the day of disappearance. She was afraid to talk about it. It was a simple text, without punctuation, without explanation.
He found me.
Adele's heart stopped. Who? Who was this he? Why was this message not taken into account earlier? She showed it to the police. We barely listened to him. An officer rolled his eyes. It could be anyone, ma'am.
Annex. A friend was a little heavy.
You can't act on an assumption. But Adele had no doubts. Her daughter was scared. She felt hunted. And someone had found her. The front door opened with a dull thud, and Adele rushed in, both hoping and dreading the moment. It was a fragile figure that appeared in the doorway, hair in disarray, clothes rumpled, and above all, that look, that broken look. Lena, his Lena, who, before disappearing, was a teenager full of energy and dreams, now seemed older, more tired, like an old soul in the body of a young girl. She didn't speak right away.
No tears. No hasty gestures.
She was there, present but distant, as if her body had returned but her spirit was elsewhere, in a place too dark to be reached by motherly love, too distant to be comforted. Adele took her in her arms, but Lena did not react. She let herself be carried away, inert, like a rag doll. It took several days for her to agree to eat, to drink, to rest her tired eyes. She just sat there, silent, staring at a distant point, as if the world around her no longer existed. The only thing she still did compulsively was wash. His hands were red, rough, the skin tattered from rubbing. The bathroom had become her refuge, her only place where she felt, or believed she felt, purified, cleansed of what she had suffered, as if water could erase the horrors of her experience. Adele, for her part, remained there, always close to her, observing in silence, fearing that the moment when Lena would finally break the silence would never come. But she waited, and when the moment arrived, it was one evening. An evening when the moon splashed the sky with cold light, and where the tension was palpable, as if the air was saturated with unsaid things. Lena, trembling, sat at the kitchen table, her voice cracking, the words coming out with difficulty, as if each sentence was a burden to bear. She spoke of a man.
A certain Mark.
A man who was not who he said he was. A so-called artistic agent, a promise of Paris, of castings, of glory. Mark had introduced himself on a social network, where the desire to escape the routine of the suburbs and experience something greater had pushed him to reveal himself. Naive, flattered, fascinated by the idea of this world that she did not know, Lena had agreed to a meeting. He told me he had contacts in fashion, friends in music, she explained weakly, her eyes avoiding Adele's gaze. I thought he could help me. I just wanted to change my life, Mom. Adele nodded, her heart sinking at the thought of this naivety. But Lena's words took a darker turn with every moment, every breath. What seemed like a simple professional meeting quickly turned into a trap. Mark, or rather Remy Solange, her real name, had locked her in an apartment with no windows to the world, where she had been cut off from everything she knew. He had taken everything she was, all her youth, her innocence. He had forced her into things she never imagined. Not alone. There were other girls. Some younger. Others have been broken for much longer. Lena was just one of many. Adele closed her eyes, her face pale, but said nothing. She listened. She couldn't say anything. The weight of the words was far too heavy. But she knew that Lena was freeing herself, in her own way, from her invisible chains. I stayed there, days, weeks, I don't even know anymore, Lena whispered. He told me that I had to do what he wanted, otherwise he would hurt my mother, he threatened me. That was when Adele understood. It wasn't just a kidnapping. It wasn't a simple runaway. It was a much deeper abyss. Lena had been a prisoner, not only of man, but also of fear. The fear of hurting those she loved. She stayed because she was told that everything was going to be her fault, that no one would believe her. Lena had survived. A moment of inattention on the part of his captor.
A poorly closed door. A moment of freedom, a hasty flight into the night, wandering without a precise aim, looking for an escape.
She had walked for hours in the dark streets, until she found the courage to return home, slipping through the night like a ghost. The house, the warmth of her mother, the smell of coffee, everything seemed foreign to her after everything she had experienced.
Adele remembered the first sleepless nights, the incessant calls, the desperate searches.
That evening, she swore in her heart that she would not let this go unpunished. It wouldn't just be a scar that would fade with time. No. It would be a battle, a war to save his daughter and the others. She contacted an association that helps victims of trafficking. She called, cried, spoke to anonymous voices about the hell her daughter had lived in. Lena, initially reluctant, ends up agreeing to testify. It was a colossal step, a challenge, because every word she spoke took her back to the darkness she had fled. But she did it. She spoke. The investigation was long and difficult. The police, initially reluctant, eventually believed his story. And little by little, voices were raised. Other girls, freed from their chains, began to testify in turn. They were all there, invisible before, but now united in this quest for justice. The trial of Remy Solange, which took place in the media spotlight, revealed the extent of the human trafficking network he led. He had abused, manipulated, destroyed lives. And when the verdict came, the sentence was as harsh as necessary. 25 years of criminal imprisonment. But for Lena, even this sentence was not enough. Justice was certainly served, but the scars were deeper than the justice system could imagine. Lena looked at Adele that evening, her eyes full of pain that no one could understand. "There are some things you can never cure, Mom," she said, her voice trembling. "I will live, yes, but a part of me remained there. I don't have the strength to erase everything." Adele took her in her arms, feeling the weight of her daughter's suffering, but also the silent strength of her resilience. "You don't have to erase everything, Lena.
You're not alone.
We'll move forward together.
Whatever it takes."
And in this embrace, Adele knew that the path would be long, but that they would travel it side by side, one step at a time. The reconstruction was slow, painful, but stubborn. First there was the silence, heavy as a leaden blanket, which enveloped Lena even when she opened her mouth.
The words refused to come.
So she drew, scribbled, pasted images on white sheets of paper. It was his way of silently screaming. For weeks, every daily gesture became a titanic effort. Getting up, washing, eating. Each sudden noise made his tense body jump. Every look, even tender, seemed a threat. Adele learned not to ask too many questions.
To just be there.
Present. Solid. She prepared infusions that Lena did not drink, placed a warm sweater on her shoulders without saying anything. Their silences became companions, sometimes sweeter than words. The bathroom remained the only place where Lena felt even remotely in control. She spent hours there, as if to wash not only her skin, but her soul. Then came the first therapy sessions. At first, Lena refused to go there. Then she went there, but did not speak. Just sat, looked out the window. And one day she spoke. One sentence. Then another. And so, word by word, she weaved the thread of her own resilience. The nights remained restless. Nightmares came without warning, muffled screams in the darkness, sheets soaked with sweat. Adele came running each time, reassured, rocked, without ever forcing Lena to explain. She knew that sometimes the only thing to do was wait, watch, and hold hands. But little by little, bursts of life resurfaced.
A laugh, furtive, almost stolen.
A tune hummed in the shower.
An apple pie made together.
Walks in the forest became a ritual. They walked in silence, breathing the humid air, listening to the rustling of the leaves like slow healing music. Lena looked at the trees, their quiet verticality, their way of standing despite the storms. Then, one morning, she opened the cupboard and took out her cello. His hands were trembling. The strings were rusty, the bow forgotten. But when she placed the instrument between her legs, an ancient breath passed through her. She played a note. Then another. It was clumsy, fragile. But it was the beginning. She began to compose again. To write. To transform horror into art. His piece, Nocturne for a Return, was both a cry and a caress. A complaint, but also an anthem. She played it 1 year to the day after her escape, in a modest but full room. People listened, shocked. Some were crying without even knowing why. Adele, in the front row, had her hands clasped. Her tears flowed, but they were no longer of despair. They were of hope, of gratitude, of unquenchable love. Since that evening, every night, Adele leaves a lamp burning in the hallway. No longer for fear that Lena won't come back, but like a beacon.
A symbol.
That of a path that we can always find again. That of a home which, despite the storms, remains a place of warmth. And that of a mother's love, dented, scratched, but indestructible, capable of healing, note after note, silence after silence.